Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MMA Island podcast. I am Jack Kennedy alongside Mace Martinez and Keelin McNamara. We have an amazing podcast lined up for you guys today. So much happened. Crazy. I'm still shaking. I haven't even processed it yet. We'll get going. Obviously, we'll be reviewing three huge fights from the past card and the fights to make off of those results. So let's go ahead and get right into it. The first of the major upsets, Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Ribas. What do you guys make of this fight?
Yeah, I thought Ribas was going to get the job done. I thought she'd be able to take Rodriguez down and submit her eventually, but obviously that wasn't the case. Rodriguez's striking was on point, and she really put it on Ribas there in the second round. It got the finish. It appeared that when Ribas went down the first time that she was pretty limp, in my opinion. I think the fight should have been stopped at that point. I know Herb Dean ran in there and so much so that Rodriguez thought the fight was stopped and stood up and walked away, kind of turning her back. And then, luckily Ribas didn't take too much damage after that. I think it was another right hand to the face, and she was pretty much out on her feet. It's a big win for Rodriguez. I don't know if she cracks the top 5 right now, but she's definitely going to be closer to it with a win like that. And, for Ribas, it's only her second defeat, so she just needs to dust herself off and get back in there, and she'll be good to go.
Man, talk about what a trendsetter and a mood setter for a fight card. What an amazing opener for the main events. Amanda Ribas, obviously on a fantastic 4-fight win streak. Personally, like Mace, I thought she'd come in and get the business done. First round, I did think she looked quite good. Obviously, we knew if she got this fight to the ground, she would have the big grappling advantage there, and I do think the levels were shown. Credit to Marina Rodriguez for staying in it, expanding her energy, not letting her pass the guard. Second round, Marina Rodriguez came out like a freight train. I had a feeling she'd come out angry from being stuck in the ground for that long. Hit her with an absolute hell shot of a hand. And like Mace, I thought the fight was done at that. Because, Amanda Ribas is a tough cookie. When she went down, she did look limp. And whenever Herb went over, I thought, good call. This is the right time to call this fight. I can understand why Marina did it. I don't necessarily agree with walking off until the fight's done, but based on how powerful the hand was, I could understand that. But thankfully, like Mace said, she didn't take much more damage after that. Very good stoppage. As for where they go from here, the way I see Marina Rodriguez's trajectory right now, I think I don't think she's in line for a title shot or anything yet. I think probably taking on number 5 or number 4 at strawweight's the most appropriate direction and building up from there. But she looked really, really good. And to come back from being on the ground for so long shows a lot of character for a brawler fighter. As for Amanda Ribas, I definitely don't think this is. I've seen a lot of media outlets claiming that the hype train's been fully derailed and that she has to lick her wounds and so on and so forth. I don't think it's that major. As Mace said, it's only her second loss. She will learn from this. She's already a great fighter. She will only be better for it. I think she'll come back. She's amazing on the ground. She's just got to be much more careful with her defense standing. That boxing can catch a lot of people out, especially natural grapplers. So a couple of tweaks in the feet here and there, and Ribas will be right back in it. But what an amazing fight to start the card.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'll start with Ribas and just for Rodriguez, it's not often can you be a higher ranked opponent and fight a low ranked opponent and benefit so much from it. But in this, I think she does so much because Amanda Ribas has been a real talking point for this division, a real contender that people think will move up, and I still think she will. But derailing that as for now, getting a huge win, demonstrating that she is one of the best strikers in that division is so huge. And on the fight card where everyone was watching, absolutely massive for Marina Rodriguez. And I think she will be moving up, almost cracking top 5 after that, even though she fought a lower ranked opponent. It's almost beating Khamzat Chimaev, even though he's very low ranked. That's a really up and coming fighter that people view that is higher ranked than they actually are. So huge win for her. As for Amanda Ribas, I thought she handled the loss very well, which is a huge precedent that was set on the entire card. Every single fighter that lost, I thought, pretty much handled it as good as you possibly could. And for her as well, she wasn't hanging her head low or anything. She still had a smile on her face. And she's going to be good to go. She'll rebound. This is her first loss in a long time, and losing to Marina Rodriguez is no shame at all. And she looked phenomenal in the first round. She was dominating the fight in the first round. So I think she's good to go. My last takeaway, though, is, and this made me so nervous, was Herb Dean. Oh, man, that made me so crazy. Whenever he went in there, jumped in, right? And then Rodriguez, she steps away because the fight should be done. And then you look at the replay, and Herb Dean steps in, and they kind of matrixes out and, like, dodges a bunch of stuff and everything. So we didn't officially stop the fight. But really, the fight should have been done right there. And it was good on Herb Dean to recover from it and didn't let her get knocked down again, because one more straight right hand away and she would have been knocked out. So it was good. Whenever she got up, she was wobbly, took another jab, and Herb Dean stepped in, because another big power shot or anything, that could have been really bad and everything. And that it made me nervous, though, going into it, because he was refereeing the Connor Dustin fight. I was hoping, please don't make anything go wrong with that. Just like there was a questionable decision earlier in the card. It was like, I hope it doesn't go to a decision. So everything worked out. Obviously, it was fantastic, and Herb Dean recovered. So those are my big takeaways from that fight.
Yeah, I think Rodriguez will learn now to keep going until the referee actually puts their hands on her to get her off.
Yeah,
most definitely.
It didn't cost her, but good fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Massive credit to Marina for taking her opportunity in prime real estate, especially a Conor McGregor card. As we've said, she looked great. Thankfully, as well, Herb recovered. That's the sign of a true experienced official, especially with the hate that they get a lot. I think he was really good to recover the way he did.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think everybody came out of this looking quite good, actually. Just overall great fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get moving on now. Our co-main event, Dan Hooker versus Michael Chandler. First off, credit where credit is due. Mace was the only one to predict Michael Chandler. So credit to Mace. And Mace, what are you thinking about this crazy debut?
Yeah, like you just said, I knew Michael Chandler would get it done. I just had a feeling he was going to win the fight. I did not expect him to win the way he did. You can't have a much better debut than that, man. Like, you really can't talk at all. To go in there and knock out a guy in the top 10 like that, it's the perfect way to start for him. As far as Hooker goes, I'm not sure what the deal is. I know I saw him take off his gloves, and apparently he left them in the octagon. So usually in most cases, that's a sign of a fighter retiring. So I don't even know if he's made a statement yet or not about that, or if he's addressed that.
I don't think he has, yeah.
In my opinion, him retiring right now would be a mistake. I think he's still legit, and he's a legitimate contender at 155. I think he's a great fighter. So hopefully he decides to keep fighting. But yeah, if you're Chandler, you couldn't have done a better job announcing your arrival in the UFC. And like, I like to call outs afterwards as well of Habib, even though I don't think he's coming back. I like the call out of McGregor, Poirier, whoever, the call out was perfect. So he set himself up to be a big, big star at 155. So I'm looking forward to seeing him in the future.
Iron Mike Chandler, welcome to the spotlight. What a performance from Iron Mike. As you said, absolute credit to Mace. He is the only one out of us who predicted Chandler to get the job done. I will admit, the longer this went on before the fight, I was teetering towards Chandler, because of his wrestling and how that would play out. But I did stick with Hooker ultimately. What a performance from Mike Chandler, guys. As I said, I was confident that Chandler would look amazing, which he did. Did not expect him to win the way he did. What a hellacious left-handed knockout, a tough guy like Dan Hooker. Just pressure off the bat. Looked really good. Striking looked clean. Just looked comfortable in every facet. And, again, similar to Marina Rodriguez, taking your opportunity on such prime fighting real estate. Michael Chandler's firmly in the spotlight now, and that could not have gone any better for him. Just absolutely incredible. I'm really happy for him as well. Obviously, there were a lot of doubters and naysayers before the fight. Could he cut it in the UFC in arguably the most stacked division in the company? And boy, did he prove people wrong.
Yeah. Oh man, I am so excited for Michael Chandler. I was watching that, and this fight card, I have not reacted this way in a long time. I think the last fight card I was freaking out as much was UFC 217. I think it was GSP Michael Bisping, that crazy fight card. I was losing my mind every second of this because you go out there and you can already tell that it's so tense between the two lightweights in the co-main event. It's a main event feeling for a co-main event with these guys, and it was so crazy. Michael Chandler is going to be one of the most dangerous threats to any lightweight. The way he looked on Saturday, he was Dan Hooker. I think can take a shot better than most people in the entire weight class and UFC. Dustin Poirier couldn't finish him. Paul Felder was laying it on him for a long time, and maybe that was added up on his chin a little bit. But I think it was Michael Chandler's pure style. I think Dan Hooker was saying in all the pre-fight stuff that he could defend the takedown. He was ready to defend the takedown, but whenever he went out there, he was just circling against the cage, creating distance, almost afraid to. I don't even know if he threw a jab or two in the entire fight. He was just circling, I think, waiting for Michael Chandler to shoot. And then I think he was kind of just waiting to throw that knee. I think that's what he was banking on. But Michael Chandler has extreme power, and I completely underestimated that because we haven't seen that go into Bellator at all. So I didn't really know how that was going to translate over to the UFC against a top-level guy like Dan Hooker, who we've never seen anyone do that to before. So whenever Michael Chandler, he's kind of just backing up or whatever, he took a shot, feinted, looked right, and then hit the left. And man, that landed. Hooker went down. Chandler just poured on the pressure and good stoppage. It was just so crazy, and I'm so happy for him because that is a real contender that just got dropped into the UFC's lightweight division. And real quick, as for Dan Hooker as well, I think he kind of threw in the gloves there just in the moment, very emotional, obviously, because you have to spend so long, especially going back to New Zealand. It takes so long to get back in there because of COVID protocols and everything. So it's really frustrating with all the long camp you put in and everything to lose that quickly. So I think that was out of really frustration because he can rebound from this. He'll be back, and there's a lot of fights to make it 155. So I am so excited, and welcome to the UFC, Michael Chandler.
I agree.
Man, it is just absolutely fantastic for Chandler. The shark infested waters of 155 have another great white amongst them, in my opinion. Assuming Khabib's retired, and I do think he is, I think a lot of the strikers who occupy 155 thought they got a reprieve from not having a wrestler amongst them. Well, they're going to be heartbroken now because Michael Chandler is here and he is here to stay. And I see him being a huge problem for anybody in the top five.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, let's go ahead and go on to the main event of the evening. The whole thing, this card was built around the return of Conor McGregor against one of the best lightweights in the world, Dustin Poirier. What do you guys think about this one?
Man, it's a hard one to swallow, being a fan of Conor, but I thought Conor came out looking good. He got taken down. He got back up to his feet. I thought he was outboxing Poirier easily, in my opinion. But, when the calf kicks started to add up, it was pretty much over with for Conor. Just a brilliant game plan by Coach Mike Brown and great execution by Poirier. And if you've noticed in the past, Conor is susceptible to those leg kicks. I know in the first Poirier fight, he had a couple landed on him. And even in the fight in New York when he beat Eddie Alvarez for the second belt, early in the fight, Alvarez, took his leg out from under him there briefly. So
that was the first shot, I think.
Right. So
I think it was, yeah.
For me, it looks like Conor's lost his killer instinct a little bit. And, if I'm being honest, and there was a sequence in the fight. I'm sure y'all saw it. Conor threw 3 1-2 combinations in a row. And the first two combinations he threw, he didn't make any contact with Dustin, but Dustin never made any adjustments. So it seemed as if maybe Poirier was having trouble telegraphing where the punches were going to come from or when they were coming. And then the third one that he throws lands on Dustin, a huge left hand. And I thought at that point, is when McGregor should have gone all in and tried to TKO Dustin, just like Dustin did to him eventually. I think Conor just came into this thinking that it was just going to be a straight up boxing match, and that's the war that they were going to go to. And if that was the case, then we'd be having a different conversation. It's frustrating though, just because as talented as Conor is, he obviously hasn't learned how to check the calf kick or the inside leg kicks or whatever you want to call them. And for a man in the top of the lightweight division, like, you're in deep shit if you don't learn how to do that. Look at these guys that are in there. Can you imagine if that was Justin Gaethje, Ferguson, or RDA that was kicking Conor like that? I mean, like, no
Edson
disrespect.
Barbosa, imagine if he was still in 155.
Exactly. And no disrespect to Dustin, but those guys would have made it worse for McGregor. And to come in there and say, you're ready for war and all this and that, and that's all well and good, and you're getting the fans hyped and you're still in the fight. And then to go in there and have the calf kicks be something that, that eventually leads to you getting knocked out. I mean, those calf kicks were killer, man. And I think Conor really needs to sit back and he needs to look at things that, as far as what he's committing himself to fully, because like the whiskey business that he's got, the August McGregor clothing that he has, the McGregor fast training program that he has, all those things, you can take time off from those things because he's got people there to run these businesses for him. In the fight business, it's you alone. You know what I mean? So you take a year off, you're not going to come back and beat these top guys. You're not going to come back and beat Khabib, or you're not going to come back and beat Poirier, obviously. When Conor was the best in the world at 145, he was active. He was fighting every 3 months. So I think he's definitely got to look at that and figure out what he wants to do. But I don't think he's finished by any stretch of the imagination. But I think he needs to decide either. And I saw this written somewhere in an article. I think it was MMA Junkie. It's either you got to be all the way in or you got to be all the way out. There can't be any more in between here. And I think maybe it's going to take this loss to Dustin to realize that. But he needs to focus 100% on martial arts or go box or whatever he wants to do. But if he's going to stay in this game, it's got to be 100% focused because there's plenty of killers, including Michael Chandler, who just arrived, that are trying to take that belt. So it's going to be no easy feat for him. So I'm extremely interested to see where he goes from here for sure.
I'm sorry, I just got nightmarish thoughts of Edson Barbosa's leg kicks. No, man, in all seriousness, what a fantastic showcase by Dustin Poirier. The maturity and the development in this guy is unlike anything I've ever seen. Massively deserved this victory. I do agree with Mace. First round, I had McGregor up. I thought he was getting just about the better of the exchanges boxing-wise. I was very intrigued seeing him come out in the opening round, though. He was very, very heavy on his feet. Like Mace alluded to, it's almost like he was fighting a boxing match and not a mixed martial arts match. There was none of that lightness, almost karate, capoeira style on his feet. Like if you look at the Chad Mendes fight, moving, flowing in empty spaces. Here he was very open. He was there to hit and then get hit, and it's unlike Conor McGregor. So yeah, I was disappointed in his movement. Obviously, being that stale and sort of planting, I think he's become so scared of takedowns that he started to completely move his game around that. Instead of fighting the Conor McGregor fight, he's decided to fight his opponent's fight instead of his own. And I think that is starting to act to his detriment quite severely now. Obviously, planting your legs so obviously, and I think Mike Brown and Thiago Alves were geniuses to pick this up at American Top Team. That lead left leg kick was just so open, and Dustin executed it perfectly. Not only taking out the left leg, but taking out the ability to throw that left hand and get the power behind it. And it's kind of like taking out the 16-pound gun on a battleship. That's McGregor's party piece. And without the ability to lean and plant on that left leg, he was never going to be able to throw that left hand in the second round. Just a far, far more mature and developed performance from Dustin. Whenever he finishes the fight, that leg kick, he eventually cripples over on that. And that leads into that cannon of a right hand from Justin that eventually finishes the fight. So yeah, massive props to Dustin. I really hope he doesn't get sort of swept into all the is McGregor in, is McGregor out, because Dustin deserves so much credit for what he's been through and what he did. But I very much agree with what Mace just said about McGregor's intentions and where his actual head's at. I kind of have to question his preparation at this point and who he has around him in a way, because this is not the true Conor McGregor. I think he's become too comfortable in his preparation almost. It looks to me like he doesn't have true killers in his camp anymore. And it's starting to reflect. He's starting to look like a snake that's been devenomed and defanged. And that's a scary thought because we all know how lethal McGregor is, fully potent and fully focused. And I do think the whiskey business and the clothing lines, they're taking a massive eye off the fight game for Conor. And as Mace perfectly said, you are either all in or you are all out in this game. Because if you're one foot in, something bad will happen to you eventually if you're not fully prepared to go in there. So I don't think it's the end for Conor. I think Mace is absolutely right in that. I do think he needs to get his head right though and determine where he's at and completely refocus and put his training back in John Kavanagh and Owen Roddy's hands. Because we've heard reports obviously over the last few weeks of McGregor taking more control of this camp and McGregor claiming to be feeling at his best boxing wise and cardio wise. I think he needs to start decentralizing control of his preparation because perhaps he's being too blinded and no one has the reins to pull him in. I think if he cedes control in that regard, we will start seeing the best McGregor again, but we won't start seeing it until that happens. As for Dustin, even though I'm Irish and by extension a McGregor fan, I'm so happy for Dustin. He does deserve this. And in my eyes, he is the 155 champion right now. You can't keep denying him anymore.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Dustin Poirier. Oh my gosh. I was losing my mind. People are, and I will talk about Conor in a second, but I don't want to focus about Conor in this situation. Dustin Poirier was completely overlooked in this fight. Everybody, in my opinion, completely focused on Conor, all of the promos, and as he's the moneymaker, of course, they're going to be looking at Conor. But Dustin Poirier went out there, and what he's done, really, no one has even come close to doing. No one has even come close to challenging, even knocking McGregor out on the feet. No one's really even beat him on the feet. Yeah, Diaz landed some good strikes, but it never really looked like he was going to knock him out. What he did was unreal. Dustin Poirier went out there and through all of the pre-fight stuff and everything, he got his head right and he went in there and fought an amazing fight. I said this on the Saturday podcast. He had to weather out the first round. If he could take that one shot to begin with, that left hand, we knew Conor was going to be out there fast. Conor looked fantastic. I don't think it was that Conor wasn't necessarily focused. I think he was focused and ready to go. I saw some other people saying he was tired. I don't think he was tired either. That was the calf kicks. I think he was focused and ready to go, but and I'll talk about Conor. It's just Dustin Poirier's game plan was perfect. And for Dustin Poirier to go out there and execute, especially in the first round, you could tell in the first round he was a little bit hesitant because he knows Conor lands that. He said he wanted to land that takedown early. Caught Conor off guard. You could tell it wasn't the best takedown, but it was there, and that had Conor thinking about just hesitating that half a second more. It was brilliant. That also opens up the leg kicks, which were amazing. He took complete advantage of that. Moved out of the way enough of the shot. He definitely ate some big shots, but he was able to absorb those and move his chin into a position where it wouldn't be a knockout shot. Brilliant game plan, amazing execution by Dustin Poirier. And at the end of the first round, I saw this and I was like, oh, now it gets very interesting. He definitely lost the first round, but towards the end of it, he landed that left hook one time and pointed at McGregor. That was a huge confidence boost for me for Dustin Poirier because that was the first real punch he had landed, and it was a good one too. Then you go into the second round and you see, oh, he's definitely gained a lot of confidence, and those leg kicks were definitely adding up. Conor wasn't slowing down because he was tired. He was slowing down because he couldn't plant on that left leg. you saw after the fight, it was basically broken. He could barely walk. It was crazy. And I think that's also what led up to the finish as well. Towards, I think it was like around the 2-minute 40-second mark, Dustin took a big shot from Conor and then closed in, landed that left hook again. And then Conor spun around to the cage because he doesn't have the balance. And then Dustin, that's his thing, going against the cage. I also said this on Saturday. That's his thing. Whenever he has a guy backed up against the cage, he just lets it all go. And it worked. He was against the cage. Conor doesn't even have any balance, so he can't like escape. Usually he'd be able to run out and circle out and go and everything, but his leg is dead. He's taking those shots from Poirier, and Poirier has some power. He finished the likes of Gaethje, who hasn't been finished by knockout in a little bit since he's changed up his style. He's obviously knocked out Eddie Alvarez. I could go on naming everybody's finished, but he has extreme power and landed that one. And Conor already off balance because of his leg. It's going to leave that chin open, and obviously that one that dropped him, and then that next one, it finished him off. And I'm just so happy for Dustin Poirier avenging that loss, and how much that he had to think about it, and just sitting all fight week in the hotel thinking about that first loss to McGregor, to go out there to execute, to completely put that behind him after the first round. Unbelievable. And then I'm gonna go. And for Conor's sake as well, I think he looked really good in the first round to me. Like you guys were saying, his style has really taken a bit of a turn, in my opinion. He especially if you were watching, I watched some of the old Conor fights at 145, Aldo, Mendez, Dennis Seaver, all of those guys. He's in that super bouncy, evasive karate style, and Eddie Alvarez as well. He's always on his toes. If you're watching him that last night, his back foot is completely planted on the ground, and he's leaning forward just like a boxing style. He's not able to move as much, and I think Keelin nailed it. I think it's about the takedown. He's so afraid of getting taken down rather than just moving around and doing his thing. And the last thing I'm going to say about Conor, I think this will motivate him for sure. I'm so glad that we get to see, and also no one, in my opinion, no one has handled a loss better than Conor McGregor. He was so respectful and everything, and I think that's going to do a large part into what happens in his future. He seems to be extremely motivated to me, especially losing like this. That gives you extreme motivation. Everyone's counting you out. Make another run. What he needs to do, though, and why Dustin Poirier is so successful and has been able to rise the ranks, climb all the way to the top, is because he has some of the most elite competition training day in and day out with him in American Top Team. In Conor McGregor's camp, he has great coaches. I don't know, he's sparring with Artem. I mean, Dylan Dennis is rolling. Dylan Dennis is very good on the ground, but just overall well-rounded guys to spar with and take advice from and bounce ideas off of. He doesn't really have that, like Dustin Poirier has, and like the elite competition and the UFC have, in my opinion. So I'm very excited to see where he goes from here, and I think he will make a return, and I think he will string together a couple wins. But for right now, like Keelin said, Dustin Poirier is the uncrowned champ of 155, and he kind of calls the shots.
Yep.
Yeah, to me, just on a quick note before we move on, Poirier's fight was almost a very Jose Aldo-esque fight, if one thinks about it. To me, Poirier fought Conor the way Aldo would have if 196 had gone on longer. Like getting that takedown early, shaking him up, and then just chopping at the base until he can't get out of the way anymore, and then throwing that hand. But, as we said, Dustin is a stud and a fantastic performance from him. He's up already, but the only way is up. As for Conor, I think he needs to assess who he is around, not coaching wise. I think he has the right mentors there, but I do think he needs to start matching the likes of Poirier in terms of the quality of people he's sparring against. He needs to get, especially with someone like Michael Chandler in the mix, he needs to start getting proper world-class wrestlers in there, world-class boxers, Muay Thai. I think jiu-jitsu, he is sort of a Dylan Dennis, because Dennis is as legit as they come.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in every other facet, if Conor improves, I think we see, like you said, Jack, I do think we see the best McGregor in the next 6 to 12 months if that happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. On to our last segment, and there's a lot to dissect here. What are the fights to make at 155 lightweight after all the madness we just witnessed?
So I have a feeling that in the coming days, the title will be vacant. I think Khabib is done fighting.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Obviously, Poirier should be in the mix there. He should fight for the title if it's not just given to him. Unless he wants to settle for a trilogy with Conor. I know he's interested in that. I know Conor wants that. And you know, if that's the case, and let Oliveira and Gaethje fight for the title. Maybe Chandler and Ferguson, I really don't know about him. Just get him an opportunity against a top 5 guy. He just beat the number 6 guy, but get him in the top 5, let him beat somebody there. And I'm interested to see where Chandler's going to be ranked come Tuesday when the rankings come out. If Poirier wants a title shot, then it should be against either Oliveira or Gaethje. Poirier said at the post-fight press conference he don't want Chandler because Chandler doesn't deserve a title shot after beating a guy that he's already beat. However, Chandler went in there and whooped Hooker's ass, and it took Poirier 25 minutes to pull that win out. So I think that's in the back of Dustin's mind a little bit. And, you know, I'm not saying he's scared of Chandler by any means. I'm not trying to insinuate that at all, but I think a lot of people at 155 are going to be hesitant to get in there with Chandler.
Yep.
After a performance like that. He's a legit threat in the division, and so we'll see what happens with him. And as far as Conor goes, I think it's perfect time for the Diaz trilogy. If he's not going to get the Poirier trilogy right away, then why not take on Nate Diaz and make that money and a win there? Who knows? Maybe you're back in the title picture.
I think Dana White should be absolutely thrilled with how things have played out Saturday night. A lot of people, you know, we've seen the memes and everything else of Dana crying because Conor's lost. But I think this sets things up even better than if Conor had won. I think this sets up the perfect, almost Ryzen-esque 155 mini tournament. I think Mace is absolutely correct. I think the 155 title is officially vacant in a few days to a week. If it's not given to Dustin, who I think is more than earned it being given to him anyway, if it's not given to Dustin, I think Dustin Oliveira for the title. I think that's a fire main event. Oliveira's on an 8 or 9 fight win streak. He's more than earned his shot. I think Dustin, you know, after that performance, I think he kind of speaks for himself. I think the perfect title eliminator test for Chandler is Justin Gaethje. Those are 2 styles that will just bump heads instantly. 2 guys who are just 2 tough SOBs who are as tough as they come, and they both hit like a sledgehammer, really. That would just be an insane fight. As for where Conor stands, I think Mace has hit the nail on the head. I think this is the perfect time. Nate Diaz apparently wants to come back to 155. Why not do a trilogy at 155? Conor's gone up to 170 twice. Let's bring Nate down, get him back in the picture. We all know how good of a boxer Nate is. If Nate looks good, who knows where he goes from here? If Conor wins, his confidence is back up. He's pushed back into the top 5, top 6. So I just think there's so many good dynamics in 155 right now. There's literally hundreds of different directions they can go with this. If the UFC play their cards right, they could do for these 2 fights in one of the biggest fight cards of the year later in the year. Just have one great big eliminator. The winners fight each other, and then the losers fight those 2.
Oh man, there's so many matchups. Why Dana White I think is I mean there's so many fights to make, and really you can't go wrong with any of these fights. Whoever wins and loses, you're still going to have amazing fights. And I think the reason he's crushed is Khabib is done. The only way Dana White would have any sort of way to convince him to come back is if Conor wins. He sees Conor on top. He doesn't like that. He comes back. It's over. Khabib is done. Lightweight moves on. So excited. Starting with Conor, Diaz has to be the matchup. The rest of the top of the lightweight division, which is who you want to see him fight, is clogged up in my opinion. I'll talk about that in a second. Diaz Conor 3 makes the most sense. Not only is that fight huge, it also has huge implications, especially on Conor McGregor's career. off of this loss. It's huge turning point. If he wins, he's right back in it. If he loses, who knows? So massive fight. They could sell a ton of pay-per-views. That's the fight to make for Conor. Dustin has to be for the title. Not even a question. Not even a question. He is basically the uncrowned champ, in my opinion. Absolutely a title shot. In my opinion, the way it shaked out, Oliveira's next in line for me. And I would like to see the Oliveira-Gaethje matchup, but the way Michael Chandler just won, he's fresh, and so is Dustin Poirier. They're both fresh, especially Michael Chandler. Didn't even break a sweat. He's ready to go as soon as possible. And the fight I want to see is Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler. Those two guys matching up. We couldn't see any of Gaethje's wrestling, but really, I think Chandler would get destroyed by Khabib if he fought him in the wrestling department. Gaethje has good wrestling. We just weren't able to see it on display. That's a very interesting matchup. Plus the leg kicks and the output that Gaethje puts on guys. Michael Chandler, that would be very interesting. So my fights to make, Diaz-Conor 3, Michael Chandler versus Justin Gaethje, and for the lightweight title, vacant lightweight title, Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira. That's my 3 fights.
I like that. I'd be down with it.
I'm fully with that. I think that's the best way to go from here. I actually think you make a really interesting point, Jack. I think Conor finds himself not at a career crossroads, but at a lightweight crossroads where he kind of just needs the sort of leadership of 155 to sort of declog itself a bit. I think this is the most sensible direction for 155 to go. These 3 fights make the most sense. They're the most competitive. To me, they're the most compelling. And I think each guy's earned a spot in those 3 fights. Each guy's earned the stripes from their performances. And I think this really sorts out the food chain at the top of 155 and who really is the king of the heap at the end of 2021, really.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
Yeah. So do I.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for this podcast. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Obviously, you can find us on iTunes and Spotify. Anywhere you can listen to a podcast, we are there. Please follow us on MMA Island on Instagram and check out our website. Keelin does great work there, as well as Mace, MMAisland.net. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening again, and great podcast, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Not all. Thank you, guys.